All right, Elf Volunteers, this is Center 3. This one's an adventure. There's some math. There's some new concepts that I had to re-review. This one's pine cone patterns. So we have a few different choices of things you can do with this one, depending on your age, your patience level, your courage that day. Everyone will start with, in the elf bin there is a bag, and I have it all bagged up like this, double bagged so that it's protected from getting beat up. A giant pine cone. We obviously will be very, very careful with this because it's very fragile. So I'm kind of on the fence. If you don't see it in there, it's because I rescued it because I didn't know if it was going to make it. There are also some tiny, tiny pine cones that the kids are going to look at. In the elf closet, there will be a huge box of pine cones. My kids and I have been collecting pine cones for the last few weeks. I would love, if you're a parent volunteer and you want to have your kids clean your pine cones out of your yard, if you bring some and add it to the box so that we have enough for the whole, we need 500. But if you do not have time to do that, there are pine cones in the closet for you. Anyway, so at the beginning before your session starts, grab one for each kid for this part. You're gonna grab one for each kid, and they can do a hands-on examination, and they can dissect it and take it apart and find the seeds and all that good stuff, okay? They can look at the patterns and how the spirals go. Now, this is where we kind of diverge. With the younger kids, we'll have a couple of versions of a worksheet. This is the easier version for the younger kids, parts of a pine cone, labeling, and you can talk about, the design. We're talking about the, designs of nature, about how the pine cone, how they overlap to help protect the seeds, and we're going to go into some Fibonacci magic with the older kids in a minute, but with the smaller kids you can talk about how the overlapping protects them and talk about how they close up when it's wet and just how cool the design of pine cones is. So this is probably good for kindergarten and first. First and second, you can have them draw their own pine cone. You can have them draw the pine cone that they are dissecting and then label it. Then, this is when it gets really fun. So, Fibonacci was a guy, an Italian scientist from the 12th century, who discovered, I'm reading from the paper, a pattern in nature. It's pretty cool. So there's a chart that explains it, and I'm going to include a YouTube video. And the Fibonacci sequence is basically 1, 2, 3, 5. So 0 plus 1 is 1, and then you take these previous numbers, add them together, and it's 2. You take these two numbers, and it's 3. You take these two numbers, and it's 5, etc., etc. So the sequence is 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, 21, 34, etc., etc. This is often referred to the golden ratio, we find this a lot in nature. With respect to pine cones, there is a handout that explains, this is actually pretty cool, that if you count the spirals in a pine cone, most commonly they are Fibonacci sequence. So if you take a pine cone, and I don't have a real pine cone, but this is actually easier, sorry about the glare. And what I did is I put this in a cover so that you can dry erase and write on this to show the kids that if you count the spirals, so if you count, red is 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. 13 is a Fibonacci number. And then if you count them, you can see, so you see these spirals very obviously, but then you also see that there are spirals this way. And if you count them this way, I think in this case it was 13, which is also Fibonacci, so it's pretty cool. So what we're gonna do with the kids is you are going to get from the elf closet, we're gonna have some closed pine cones. There's gonna be a bucket with some water. That will have closed pine cones that we'll be taking out and getting them dry enough so that they can write on them with Sharpie. And you're going to let them try to color these sequences in, or color these in and count them. It's gonna be tricky. I'm not optimistic, but I think it's worth a try. But if nothing else, this is a really cool example of what that looks like. Some other things that we see Fibonacci, and if you want to explain this in a very, I think the painting or like marking the pine cones and trying to count, that's definitely for the bigger kids. But if you want to explain some of these other concepts to the littler kids, it's pretty cool. So pineapples also have that. They have the two versions of the spirals that are Fibonacci. Flower petals are very commonly, the number of petals is a Fibonacci sequence. Your hand is, and you can actually, I'll put a ruler in there, the kids can measure their fingers and see that it's that same 1, 2, 3, 5, 8 proportions. And then sunflowers are the same deal with where you can count the spirals. So yeah, so this one is kind of complicated, but I think we can do it. Again, there'll be a video. Let me know if you have any questions. Good luck.